We are live. So good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I'm with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we're all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we are so excited right now because we've got 6 classes joining us literally coast to coast across Canada and the States. So we're so excited to introduce them. I'm going to give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out before we dive in with our speaker. So we've got Miss Frams, grade 5s in Rochester in Minnesota. Hi, guys. Hey! We've got Miss Francis, grade 2s in Red Deer in Alberta. Hi, guys. Welcome in. We've got Miss Wages, kindergartners in Canton in Illinois. Hi, guys. Hey, they got the video working. Awesome. Way to go. Hi, guys. We've got Miss Teason's grade 3-4s in Surrey in British Columbia. Hi, guys. Oh, your hands. I love it. All right. We've got Miss Becker's grade 5s in San Diego in California. Another place I wish I was right now. And last but not least, we've got Miss Shorts, grade 7-8s in Sarnia, Ontario. Hi, guys. That was like a super enthusiasm for a 7-8 class. Way to go, you guys. All right. Of course, the reason you guys are all here today is for our speaker. We are joined live by Tammy at the Turtle Hospital in Marathon, Florida, in the beautiful and very warm Florida Keys. The Turtle Hospital has been rescuing, rehabilitating, and re-releasing injured sea turtles for several decades now. They are our biggest partner. We've done more sessions with them than anyone. And so we're so thrilled to have them back again. Thank you so much for joining us, Tammy, and take it away.
All right. Welcome, guys. Glad to have you all joining us here today at the Turtle Hospital in Marathon, Florida, in the heart of the beautiful Florida Keys. We're located about halfway in between Miami and Key West. We're on the Gulf side. We have the Gulf of Mexico on one side of the islands and the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. So here you are right now looking at our outside bay area. This is our dock. That boat there belongs to our founder. We don't use it to rescue turtles, but sometimes he helps us out. So I'm going to start you guys off by walking into our big saltwater pool. Now, this property was originally built as a hotel in the 1950s. And when it was built, it came with this 160,000 gallon natural saltwater pool. This is now a permanent habitat for all of our non-releasable turtles. I'm going to walk you down through here now, see if we can find some of our permanent residents. Oh, we have a little stowaway there, a little iguana who's running down. All right, so here is little Corey. Now, Corey just got new weights on his shell yesterday. A lot of the patients that are here in this big saltwater pool are actually here because they have a syndrome that is called bubble butt syndrome. We actually have a patient here whose name is Bubble Butt, and he was the very first patient who was ever diagnosed with what we affectionately call here at the hospital bubble butt syndrome. It is officially known as positive buoyancy disorder. Now, basically what happens is these turtles get hit by boats, their internal organs malfunction, and they begin to release microbubbles of air and gas that then get trapped underneath the turtle's shell. Now, a turtle with an air bubble in its shell becomes a floating turtle, and that is really problematic for turtles out in the wild. Turtles need to get down to the bottom of their habitats to feed on their seagrass beds. That's also where they sleep and rest. And a floating turtle is much more susceptible to both predator attacks and boat strikes hanging out on the surface of the water. So we actually give these turtles weights on the back of their shells. And those are the 2 gray round buttons that you see that are on the back of Corey's shell there, kind of near his tail. And those weights are adjusting his buoyancy and making him go from positively buoyant to neutrally buoyant. Yep, he is absolutely still floating on the surface of the water right now, but he is doing that by choice. If he chooses, he can use his front flippers and a little swimming action to get all the way down to the bottom of his habitat. And the reason that he has those weights is to allow him to get to the bottom. Now, Handsome Bowie, this big girl right in front of me now, is another one of our bubble butt patients here at the hospital. She also happens to be the largest turtle that's living here right now. She got weighed last week and she weighs in at a little over 300 pounds. That is really big for a green sea turtle, but these guys can get all the way up to 500 pounds, believe it or not. All right, this handsome fellow right over here, Montel, come out of the shadows for me, buddy. That is another one of our permanent residents. His name is Montel. And Montel came to us with a lot of drama in his life. He is missing his left front flipper entirely, half of his front right flipper. He's missing one of his eyes. He came to us with a virus known as fibropapillomavirus. He was once attacked by a shark and once hit by a boat. I personally think his name should be Lucky, but it's not. It is Montel. Now, Montel is another one of our permanent residents, and that means that he is an adoptable turtle. So if you guys, as a classroom or even as individuals, decide that you would like to adopt one of our permanent residents, it costs $35 a year. You get an official certificate of adoption, color photograph and biography of your turtle, a magnet for your fridge at home, and then approximately every 4 months, your turtle will write you a letter telling you exactly what's going on with that individual and all of their friends here at the Turtle Hospital.
Cool.
Now, I mentioned briefly the fibropapillomavirus. That's actually why we see the majority of the patients that we have here at the Turtle Hospital. That is a naturally occurring virus. Unfortunately, though, we are seeing the rate of occurrence here in the Florida Keys with our green sea turtles at a much higher rate than we should be. Somewhere between 50 and 85% of our green sea turtles here in the Florida Keys have fibropapillomavirus. And we believe this is because their immune systems have actually been compromised by water pollution. Now, ironically, we do have a larger population of loggerhead turtles here in the Keys than we do green sea turtles, but almost every single one of our fibropapilloma patients is a green sea turtle. And that has a lot to do with what these different turtle species like to eat. Loggerhead turtles eat primarily crustaceans. They eat things like lobster and crab and conch. And green sea turtles eat mostly green stuff, seagrass and algae. Now, unfortunately, it is those same aquatic plants that make up the primary food source for the green sea turtles that act as the filters for our ocean, absorbing and removing toxic chemicals once they end up in the water. So once these green sea turtles come along and eat that seagrass and algae, they are now ingesting these chemicals at a much higher concentration than they should be, and it is affecting their immune systems. We do actually have 22 non-releasable patients here in this back saltwater pool. 5 of those residents are permanent residents, so they are eligible for adoption. Now, guys, sea turtle hatchlings have a really low rate of survival. Believe it or not, only 1 out of every 1,000 sea turtle hatchlings will make it to turtle adulthood. Only 1 out of every 600 hatchlings will make it past their first 2 years of life. So I'm going to show you guys a couple of tiny, adorable little post-hatchling loggerhead sea turtles. These 2 guys are both about 6 months old. This is Lucy here on the left and her partner in crime, Ethel, over here on the right, named for the TV show Lucille Ball. I'm going to put my hands out on the surface of this water so you guys can see exactly how big they are or how little they are, right? Right about the size of my hand. That's how small these little turtles are. No, don't bite me. Now, these turtles have been selected to be this year's Head Start patients here at the hospital. We're going to hold these 2 turtles here until they're nice and big and fat and strong, until they're 2 full years old. And that will give them the very best chance of survival possible. Now, these 2 loggerhead sea turtles were actually born from the same nest. They came from a researcher at Florida Atlantic University near Jupiter, Florida. They are very cute. They also have, I know it's sort of hard to see it with my angle. Let's see if I can get a little lower here. They have kind of a groove along the back of the shell here that's raised. And it sort of acts like, Here we go, a little extended spine there. It acts as a predatory defense mechanism. It helps make these guys seem less delicious to predators like sharks and toothed predatory fish. We do find lots of small turtles inside of fish like mahi-mahi and tuna, big fish that we have here in the Florida Keys. Now, these loggerhead turtles are carnivores, just like their larger counterparts. They are eating crustaceans, lobster, crab, and conch. And so when we feed them, we give them a very, very fine dice of that food that we put on the bottom of their tank, and then they dive down to the bottom and pick it up with their mouths. The loggerhead turtles are pretty territorial as a species. They are very aggressive, which is why these guys have to be separated from each other. These turtles, even when they're first born, about the size of chicken nuggets, about an inch, inch and a half long, are already fighting with each other and biting on each other's shells. It's just part of their natural behavior. All right, guys, we've got a tour group coming through on the big saltwater pool, so I'm going to move us up to a smaller enclosure in just 1 second, talk about some of the turtles up there. This cute little guy is a little green sea turtle. His name is Grunts. He's about 2, maybe 2.5 years old, and he came in with an intestinal parasite called Caryospora. So we are treating that with a prescription medication. Usually when people find these turtles out in the wild with that intestinal parasite, the turtles are very lethargic and fatigued, a little listless. Sometimes they're floating. It's generally not a good thing for a turtle to be floating. This patient is Little Palm. She is recovering from the fibropapillomavirus that I mentioned a little bit earlier. She's had several surgeries to have her tumors removed. She still needs a couple more surgeries before she is officially clear.
He's heading that way towards that pole. That is bubble butt. You can see he has a very large.
All right, guys, bear with me for just 1 moment while I walk you over to the next enclosure.
Take your time. This is good. This is highlighting how amazing your education programs are all at once. Oh, iguanas.
We have lots of iguanas here. Yep.
Look at that. Very cool.
They're unfortunately an invasive species, but they are everywhere. Okay. So this is our ICU, our intensive care unit. All of the turtles back here are in individual quarantine tanks. Now this first lady that we're seeing here is Starfish. Starfish is a subadult loggerhead sea turtle. You can see that her head is a lot bigger than the green sea turtles that we saw just a little bit ago, and that's what loggerheads are named for. Sailors used to see them pop up to breathe in front of boats and ships, and they would see their large heads and say to themselves, is that a loggerhead? Loggerhead, that's how this turtle actually got its name. Now this turtle unfortunately was the victim of a predator attack. Humans, of course, are turtles' biggest predators, but like I mentioned earlier, we do find these turtles inside of lots of larger predatory fish. This turtle unfortunately was attacked by a shark. She is missing all of her back right flipper, more than half of her front left flipper. Now, when she came in, she was and still is incredibly feisty. As you can see, she is very active. She's been eating on her own since the very first day she arrived. That's pretty unusual. Now, this turtle is so feisty that she is still trying to bite her rehabbers when they take her out of the water for wound care. That sounds like a bad thing, but in this case, that is actually a good thing because this turtle is going to need to have a lot of fight left in her in order for her to heal up and get better. Now, the next turtle that you're going to see over here is another loggerhead sea turtle. She's an adult female, so her head is going to be even bigger. Let's see if I can get you a shot out of the water glare there. There we go. Can you see how big her head is and that nice big thick neck? I also would like for you guys to notice that the coloration of the skin on these loggerhead turtles in between the brown spots on their heads and flippers is much more yellow in color than it is white or gray on the green sea turtles. So that's another great way to identify loggerhead turtles from green sea turtles. Now this turtle unfortunately was hit by a boat. So she is missing a large chunk of her shell. You can kind of see it there. That is her soft tissue. That's her body cavity showing through underneath the shell there. This turtle's name is Medea. And unfortunately, when that boat hit her, it did also nick her spine. So both of her back flippers are partially paralyzed. She is also a bubble butt patient, so she's wearing those round weights on the right side, or both of the sides of her shell rather, and those weights are keeping her very comfortably at the bottom. But that does mean that Medea is officially a non-releasable turtle, so she will be here with us, most likely for the rest of her life. The next turtle back here that you're going to meet is named Crush. Now, we, the staff here at the Turtle Hospital, do not usually get to name the turtles that live here. We reserve that honor for the person who actually rescues the turtle. And that means that once a year, sometimes twice a year, we end up with the turtle whose name is Crush, after the turtle in the Finding Nemo movie. Now, I don't know if all of you have seen that movie or not, but it actually is a little misleading about the true natural lives of turtles. The Finding Nemo movie would have you believe that they ride the currents with their friends and family for their entire lives, and that's actually not true at all. Sea turtles are primarily solitary creatures. They are out on their own from the very first day that they leave their nest and go into the water, except for mating season. They come back to shore to find their significant others when it's time for them to reproduce at the beginning of breeding season. This turtle's name is Trinity. You can probably see why. She is down to 3 flippers. She was also the victim of a shark attack, and unfortunately that shark bit off all of her left back flipper. Now, I know it doesn't look like it. This turtle looks pretty bad, but she actually got pretty lucky. Yes, the shark took all of her back left flipper, but you can see how far into the shell that shark bit when he bit her. He came really close to opening up her body cavity, and had he done that, he most likely would have severed her intestines, and she probably would have bled out in the water. So this turtle got very lucky that the shark only took her back left flipper. She then got lucky a second time when she found a person who knew enough to bring her in to the turtle hospital. This little turtle's name is Gator. Gator's a pretty young turtle. He's about 2, maybe 2.5 years old. Gator here also came in with an exceptionally high load of that intestinal parasite. Basically what that is another animal or organism that lives inside of the stomach and intestines of sea turtles. Unfortunately, they eat the turtle's food before the turtles can digest it themselves. So these turtles become malnourished. This turtle's name is PC, and PC is a very young turtle. He's only about a year, maybe slightly under a year old. And PC came in as a floating turtle. But as you can see, PC is now resting very comfortably there at the bottom of his tank, hanging out on his turtle enrichment. That structure is there simply for him to scratch his shell on. The turtle shells do get very itchy, especially when they're molting. Now, guys, we've talked a little bit about bubble butt syndrome and fibropapillomavirus as reasons that we have the turtles here, but we also end up with a lot of turtles here because of water pollution. All sea turtles love jellyfish. So when they see things like balloons that have been released into the air and plastic grocery bags floating around in the water, you can see how it would be easy for them to confuse that for their favorite food and gobble it right up. Now, unfortunately, what this leads to is intestinal impactions, trash stuck inside of the stomach and intestines of sea turtles that they cannot pass through.
Tammy, I see that we've got still another tour group coming by. I don't know if you wanted to escape from them, and then we could take some questions from our classes with 7 classes,
Sure.
a bunch more on YouTube as well.
Absolutely. Hang on one second. Let me get out of the range of those speakers and I'll be able to hear you a little bit better, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me without that interference.
Take your time, no worries. We'll say hi to the iguanas as you're walking by. All right.
All right, guys, go ahead with some of those questions for me.
All right, well, perfect. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for the presentation, giving us a little tour, and we got some babies and all sorts of amazing things that you guys are doing to take care of turtles, regardless of what they're facing. So we really appreciate that. In addition to our 7 classes, we've got a bunch of groups watching on YouTube Live. So if you guys want to type in questions in the chat bar, please do, and I'll pass along as many as I can. But that said, let's dive in. Let's go to Rochester, Minnesota first, Miss Fram's class. If you guys want to kick us off with a question, come on up.
Yeah, come over to the video. The camera. She's coming.
Take your time, no hurry.
Okay, camera's right there.
What's molting?
What's molting?
What's molting? Very good question. So turtle shells will molt as the turtles grow and their shells continue to grow with them. So molting is when the outside surface of an animal comes off, like a snake, for example, will crawl out of its skin, and that gives it a fresh start to grow a new skin. Turtles have a similar kind of function, but their shells are actually made out of bone with an outer layer of keratin, like our fingernails. So just the outer surface of the shell will start to flake away just a little bit. Actually, I think I have a molten turtle in here. I can show you exactly what that looks like. So just the top surface of the shell will start to flake away, revealing a beautiful colored shell underneath that's just a little bit softer. So this is Medea again. I'm gonna get really close up there. So you can it's difficult to see with the water flow right on top of her, but she has some darker parts of her scutes, or the scales that are on the back of her shell there. And the lighter parts are where the scute has flaked off. And that is a function of that molting capability that turtles have. Their spines and their ribs are actually fused to the inside of their shells. So their shells are part of their skeletal system and they'll stay attached to those shells for the rest of their lives. But that's how the shells get bigger as the turtles get bigger. Great question.
Yeah, great kick. I don't think we've ever gotten that question actually in all the sessions you've ever done. Excellent. Miss Fran's class, if you guys have one, come on up.
Yeah. How many turtles do you save a year?
How many turtles do we rescue in a year? Yeah. About 100, an average of 100 a year. So we estimate that in our 33 years in operation as the Turtle Hospital, we've probably released over 3,000 turtles.
Wow. Great answer, and also answer some of the questions of our YouTube classes all at once as well. So that's great. Let's go to Miss Carton's class. They joined us from Anchorage, grade 6s. If you guys want to come up for a question, go for it. Let's just get your mic demuted. Yeah, Miss Carton, it's not letting me demute you, but you know the drill, so you're good.
I got it. There you
Hey.
go. I kind of got 2 questions. How do you know when a turtle's a girl or a boy? And how do they mate?
Yeah. Good question. So it is really difficult to tell the gender of a sea turtle when they are juvenile. We can tell with blood work or with an endoscope when we go into their shells and look around with a camera. But when turtles hit sexual maturity, which is about 20 to 30 years of age, the male sea turtles will grow a great big giant sea turtle tail, and the female sea turtles have a little itty bitty teeny stubby tail. And that's because that's where the male's sexual reproductive organ is housed inside of the tail. So when turtles mate, the male turtle gets on top and that organ comes out of the tail, goes underneath the female turtles, and then inseminates her eggs internally. And then a month or so later, she will dig a hole in the sand and lay her eggs. And it takes about 2 months for them to incubate in the sand. Then those hatchlings will hatch out of the nest and all on their own crawl into the water. Then they have to swim about 7 to 15 miles offshore to their sargassum seagrass patches. And that's where they do the majority of their growing up until they're about 5 years old.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to take a question from a YouTube class. So Miss Wynn's group, 5/6s in Irma, Alberta. In that class, Gemma wants to know, what are the biggest dangers to sea turtles in the ocean?
Biggest dangers to sea turtles in the ocean are probably plastics that they ingest, to be honest with you. Again, things like balloons and plastic bags, even cigarette butts. We find a lot of those inside of turtles. Unfortunately, people throw their cigarette butts out of the car window or stomp them out on the ground and leave them there. Those wash into the sewers and waterways. Eventually, everything makes it here to the ocean. And floating on the surface of the ocean, those cigarette butts look like delicious shrimp to our turtles.
No. So that's something that our classes can actually take part in and make sure they don't litter and throw them properly and reduce and reuse and recycle, right?
Exactly.
Fantastic. All right, let's go to Ms. Wages class. If you guys have a question, come on up.
What do we see the sea turtles eat?
Could you repeat that, or could Ms. Wages repeat that?
I wanted to know if you could see one of the sea turtles eat.
If we can see one of the sea turtles eat. Okay, here's one that's eating right now. So she's got a little bit of treats. That's Kent. And there's some turtle chow on the surface of the water left over from the tour group that just came through. So she's going to go through the water and pluck out those little bits of chow. Now, sea turtles, when they take in food in their mouths, they actually are going to spit water out of their noses. And they are just spitting out some of the excess salt water that they take in when they get their food from the surface there. All sea turtles do drink some salt water. They don't need a whole lot of it. And they actually have special glands behind their eyes that remove the salt from the water that they drink.
Huh, how cool is that? Great question, guys. All right, let's head to Ms. Thiessen's class. If you guys have a question, come on up.
How long does it take for a turtle to digest their food?
The turtles have many stomachs, sort of like cows do, to help process all of the seagrass that they eat. So I would think it takes about 12 to 24 hours for them to digest their food.
Yeah, great question, guys. All right, Ms. Becker's class, we're whipping through these. This is fantastic, everyone.
How long can a loggerhead turtle live?
Yeah.
Loggerhead turtles and green sea turtles both have about the same life expectancy. It's about 70 to 100 years, so about the same as people. Good question.
Wow. Yeah, we love every time there's a turtle presentation, the age of them always gets brought up. People really seem to know that turtles are one of the longest lived creatures in the world, which is fantastic.
That's true. Yep.
All right, Ms. Short's class, and then we'll do a whole other round of questions. So come on up, guys, and Sarnia, and
Oh, hey, Dad. Hey, what made you become a turtle doctor?
yeah.
Well, I'm not a turtle doctor myself. I'm actually an educator here at the hospital, but I have always loved animals. I actually studied animal behavior in college. I went to the Ohio State University, studied psychology with a minor in zoology, which was designed as an animal behavior degree. I actually worked with chimpanzees in Ohio for about 10 years doing intelligence research with them. I moved down here to the Florida Keys to do the same kind of work with dolphins. And then about a year ago, I transitioned over here to the Turtle Hospital. But it is definitely my life's work to work with animals and help them in whatever way possible. I really enjoy my role here at the Turtle Hospital. It's the first place that I've ever worked where animals get released back out into the wild. And that is a really good, warm, fuzzy feeling when you get to see them go back home.
Yeah, what a great story. Thanks so much, Tammy. All right. In J.J. O'Neill Catholic School in Napanee, Ontario, Emily wants to ask how many turtles are currently at the Turtle Hospital?
Good question. We have 40 turtles in residence right now. It's a fairly low number for us. We have 22 non-releasable residents here in this back saltwater pool. We can take a maximum of about 100 turtles at a time as far as our staffing capabilities go. The US government thinks that we have enough room for 200 or maybe 300 turtles, but with a staff of about 20 people, we are maxed out at about 100 patients.
I just want to stress on those permanent residents too, and Tammy mentioned this in the presentation, but you guys can adopt those. If you go onto their website, and I'll share that at the end, we love if classes are able and willing to give back in conservation to the Turtle Hospital with the work that they do. So I'll send that link along later, and you can check out some of the amazing stuff that they do even beyond the presentation. That said, let's dive back into the second round of questions. Ms. Fram's class, if you guys want to come back up, come on down.
Bella's up there. Go ahead, Bella.
Is there a cure for bubble butt?
Is there a cure for bubble butt? Not usually. So sometimes if we catch that bubble in the shell very early, we can remove the air from that shell. There have been a few cases where that's been successful, but most of the time, by the time we find these turtles, their shells have already grown over top of that bubble, which seals it in as a permanent cavity in their shell. Now, the other truth about these turtles is that lots of these turtles have been hit by boats. And so the bubble butt syndrome might not be the only thing going on. A lot of these turtles have partial or full paralysis in their flippers. And if that's the case, a portion of their intestines can also be paralyzed, in which case it can sometimes be a continual release of those microbubbles of air and gas. It's not necessarily a one-time thing.
Right. Okay, great question, guys. All right, Miss Francis' class, come on back up.
Okay, go ahead. How do you find the turtles?
How do we find the turtles? Good question.
Yes,
We are not.
How do
We are
you
not.
find the-
Oh,
Sorry. Was there more to that question?
yeah, they're on a little bit of a delay, so we know that they. How do you find them? Is there anything else, guys? Sorry.
Okay, so the question is, how do we find the turtles? We are not out on the water looking for turtles. The staff here at the Turtle Hospital, we stay here to treat the patients that are currently here in the hospital. We rely on the general public to tell us about turtles who are out in the wild that they think might need some help or assistance. We see a lot of turtles come in from the Coast Guard, also charter captains, fishing charter captains, snorkeling charter captains. Those folks are out on the water every single day with their clients and guests, and they know exactly what to look for when it comes to a turtle that is in need of assistance. So we have a 24-hour stranding hotline. If a boating captain or anyone out on the water sees a turtle in distress, we ask them to call us on that 24-hour stranding hotline. We can usually triage that turtle over the phone, receiving text, pictures, and videos from the person on the boat, and then we can give that rescuer permission to bring the turtle to us on their boat to meet the Turtle Hospital ambulance on shore. And that gets these turtles much quicker attention than they would if we were to go out on a boat and try to find them ourselves.
Fantastic. What a great answer. All right, let's go back to Miss Carton's class. Come on up, demute your mic, and you have a second question. You're good to go. Hey, yeah.
How do you know when a turtle has a parasite?
I'm sorry, how do I know when a turtle has a what?
A parasite.
A parasite, thank you very much. Because the turtles tend to be very lethargic. They're fatigued, they're listless, sometimes they're floating, sometimes they even wash up on shore. Natural behavior of a sea turtle when you encounter one in the wild should be to try to get away from you. Ideally, we want that turtle to dive down. So when we see sea turtles who are floating on the surface who are barely moving, that's generally a sign that something isn't quite right. Now, in that case, these intestinal parasites actually eat the food that the sea turtles eat before their own stomachs and intestines can digest it. So these turtles end up starving to death, basically. They're malnourished, and so they become very tired.
All right.
Is that different behavior? I guess what he was asking is that different behavior than, say, if they swallowed a balloon or swallowed plastic, where they're also lethargic?
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, it could be. Absolutely. Any lethargic turtle or a floating turtle is a turtle that we definitely want to know about. Floating is one of the biggest indicators that the turtle is in trouble and in distress. So we'll often see that in combination with those intestinal impactions as well. It's really important for us to know about those turtles, however, so we can get them in here to the hospital, run a full diagnostic array on them. We'll do x-rays and ultrasounds, physical examinations, basically implore all of their, or ensure that we use all of the techniques at our disposal to try and diagnose these turtles appropriately.
Outstanding. All right. Let's take a question from a group on YouTube. So Ruby and Napani wants to know, why do turtles have to live in salt water?
Why do turtles have to live in salt water? Well, that's because that is what their bodies have acclimated to or evolved to like. They don't have to live in salt water. We can actually put these turtles in fresh water. And we do actually do that for our brand new patients who are just coming in from the ocean. And the reason that we do that is that there are other saltwater loving organisms that live outside of turtles, like, for example, leeches and barnacles. And those things die pretty immediately when we put them into fresh water. So we will often give these turtles a freshwater bath when they come into the turtle hospital, try to kill off all of those other organisms that are on the outside and undersides of their shells. Turtles don't actually have to be in salt water. They don't actually have to be in water at all. They don't have a gill system. They breathe air in their lungs just like you and I do. So these turtles, if needed, could actually be outside of the water for extended periods of time. It's not very comfortable for them, however. They have adapted to live in the water. One of the things that you might notice about this cute little hatchling that we're looking at now, this is Ethel again, is that she doesn't have any feet, right? That's the big difference between freshwater and land-loving turtles and sea turtles. Land turtles have feet. Sea turtles have flippers.
Fantastic. All right. Let's head back to Ms. Wages' class. If you guys have another question, go for it.
Say it loud. Okay. She wants to know, how do they flip those flippers?
How do they
Yeah.
flip those flippers? Yeah, they are actually really strong. They have a bone system inside of those flippers that is very similar to our finger bones and our toe bones. So they actually have bones inside of those flippers. They have more strength in their front flippers than they do their back flippers. And these adult turtles can actually swim really fast. They can hit burst speeds of up to 35 miles per hour. That is actually faster than I can ride my bike.
Huh. Very neat. How about that? All right. Ms. Teason's class, if you guys have a question, come on up.
What would happen if a turtle got eliminated from their food chain?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a really good question. If the turtle got eliminated from the food chain, well, they are really important to our ecosystem as a whole, and they certainly help manage the population of jellyfish and Portuguese man-of-war here in our ocean waters. They're also really important for our coral reef system, which most sea life here in the ocean depends on. Hawksbill turtles actually eat soft coral sponges. And without them eating those sponges themselves would actually take over the hard corals of our reef system, and that would become imbalanced. But these turtles also provide a lot of food for other predators out in the ocean, things like shark and predatory fish. Turtle hatchlings are also hunted by things like shorebirds, raccoons, and even ghost crabs.
If you watch, if any of the classes ever get a chance to watch turtles rushing to the ocean when they hatch on the beach, it's amazing. You wouldn't expect crabs to get them, but they do. So yeah, glad they got brought up. All right, I'm going to take two quick questions from Irma, Alberta. So first, Trace wants to ask a really simple question. What's the oldest turtle you've ever had at the Turtle Hospital?
Yeah, we believe that the oldest turtle here is actually Bubble Butt, that original patient named Bubble Butt. He's been here since 1989, so for a little more than 30 years, and we estimate his age to be somewhere between 50 and 60 years old.
Cool. And then the longer question, which I don't know if there's an answer to this necessarily, but Aislinn from Irma as well wants to know why turtle eyes are shaped the way they are. Is there anything unique about their eyes?
Not that I'm aware of, no, to be honest with you. Loggerheads definitely have bigger eyes than the green sea turtles. These guys do have eyelids. They do blink, which is sort of cute to see when they do it. But no, nothing special or unique about their eyes that I'm aware of. They get cataracts just like we do, though, just like people do. That's kind of interesting.
There you go. Thank you so much. All right, Ms. Becker's class, come on back up. And then I'm going to take two more questions after that.
So at the area that you guys are at, how many turtles are suffering from pollution?
So I don't know if I have a number of how many are suffering from pollution, but I can tell you that our green sea turtle population that has fibropapillomavirus, we're seeing that at a much higher rate of occurrence than we should be. Somewhere between 50 to 85% of our green sea turtles here in the Florida Keys have that fibropapillomavirus. Now, if there was a virus that was affecting the human population at that rate of occurrence, 50 to 85%, that would be considered a pandemic. And they would be locking those patients all up in hospitals and refusing to let them have any contact with the rest of the human population. So it's a pretty serious problem, and we are looking at ways to prevent that problem from exacerbating in the future.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite the analogy. I like that. All right, just a quick question. Ms. Fran's class has been typing in a bunch of them. So one of their questions is, how do they eat jellyfish without getting stung?
Yeah, they're actually immune to the jellyfish toxins and the nematocysts that would hurt you or I. So these guys aren't affected by those toxins at all. One of the interesting things about jellyfish is that they don't actually provide a lot of nutritional value for the turtles. Can you guys guess what jellyfish are made out of? It's jelly, right? Welch's, like your peanut butter and jelly sandwich? No, it's actually water. Jellyfish are 90% water. So the majority of the content, the nutritional value that these turtles are getting by eating jellyfish is hydration. They're adding water to their diets.
How neat is that? That's very cool. It's like taking a drink by eating something.
Yep.
All right. And we're going to wrap up with one last question from Ms. Short's class. If you guys want to end this off, come on up. Oh, we're unmuted.
How does a turtle escape a shark, and how long on average does a turtle stay in your care?
Yeah.
A turtle can be in our care for just a couple of weeks or a couple of months, all the way up to a couple of years. So it really depends on what's going on with that individual patient and the severity of their injuries or illness. Turtles defend themselves against sharks primarily by trying to put their hard shell into the shark's mouth. Now, sharks definitely have enough bite force that they can sometimes bite through those shells, but unlike a land turtle, a sea turtle cannot pull its head and its flippers inside of its shell to protect itself. So that hard shell is the best defense and really the only defense that it has against the sharks. So I've watched videos of sharks attacking turtles, and mostly what I see is the turtles trying to twist and turn and position the wide part of their shell into that shark's mouth so that they end up with less damage after the attack.
Yeah. We've had some really great questions today, Tammy. This has been fantastic. Before we wrap up, is there a place that we can send kids to learn more about what you guys are doing at the Turtle Hospital, a guide into places where they could donate if they were so inclined? Where can we send kids?
Of course, yeah. You can go to our website at turtlehospital.org. We do also have a couple of tracked turtles who are out in the wild right now who are wearing satellite tracking devices, and you can follow those turtles on our website at turtlehospital.org as well.
Amazing. So I'll pass along those resources to all our kids when we're done. But yeah, what we do at the end of every session, as you know, Tammy, I'm going to demute every class's microphones. And so boys and girls, if you guys could join me in saying a huge thank you to Tammy for joining us today at the Turtle Hospital. You are all now demuted. Go for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much as well.
That is some epic enthusiasm. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Again, what a really diverse session. So many classes from all over the place. We really appreciate the questions. And Tammy, thanks so much for joining us once again.
Thank you guys. It was my pleasure. And I hope you all have a totally awesome day.